Bubba Wallace crossed the finish line in second place at nearly 2 a.m., celebrating what looked like one of the strongest results of his 2026 NASCAR Cup Series season. 30 seconds later, it was gone. A post-race penalty dropped him from second all the way down to 29th, and what reportedly happened behind closed doors at 2311 Racing in the days that followed has fans asking one explosive question: is Bubba Wallace done? Today, we are breaking down two massive stories connected to this situation. First, the reported internal fallout inside 2311 Racing after the most controversial penalty of the season. Second, the fan firestorm that has completely divided the NASCAR community. And if you enjoy honest daily NASCAR conversations, hit that like button and subscribe, because we are chasing our goal of 15,000 subscribers. And we would love to have you here from the very beginning. To understand why this story exploded the way it did, you have to understand what actually happened at Echo Park Speedway. The Quaker State 400 was already one of the wildest races of the year before the controversy even started. A lengthy rain delay stopped the action for more than 3 hours while crews worked to dry the track, pushing the finish deep into the early morning hours. The 263-lap event did not end until around 1:45 a.m. local time on Monday, July 13. The race featured more than 30 lead changes, multiple cautions, and an overtime restart that set up one of the most dramatic finishes of the entire season. At the front of it all was Blaney. The Team Penske driver put together a nearly perfect weekend. He won the pole, swept both stages, and led a race-high 171 laps in the number 12 Ford. Even after brushing the outside wall late in the final stage, Blaney stayed in contention and positioned himself for his second victory of the 2026 season. But it was the final lap that changed everything. Bubba Wallace took the white flag in third position. Down the backstretch with Carson Hocevar and Ryan Blaney battling ahead of him, Wallace darted to the bottom of the racetrack, making it 3 wide for the lead. In the process, the number 23 Toyota dropped below the double yellow line, the out-of-bounds boundary that NASCAR enforces at this track. Wallace stayed alongside Hocevar and Blaney through turns 3 and 4. And then a critical shove from Christopher Bell propelled Ryan Blaney across the finish line first. Wallace crossed the line second, and for about 30 seconds it looked like a massive night for 2311 Racing. Then NASCAR made its ruling. Officials determined that Wallace advanced his position below the double yellow line on the final lap. The penalty dropped him from second to 29th, scoring him as the last car on the lead lap. The total damage was a 27-point swing in the championship standings. Christopher Bell was promoted to second place, and Carson Hocevar moved up to third. Wallace did not accept the ruling quietly. He went straight to the 2311 Racing hauler to review the data with crew chief Charles Denny and director of competition Dave Rogers. After evaluating their case, the three of them walked to the NASCAR hauler for a 31-minute meeting with officials. The penalty stood. When Wallace emerged from that meeting, his words were short and blunt. He said, "A penalty is a penalty." But before that meeting, Wallace made his case to the media, and his defense was very specific. He argued that the rule is about advancing your position, and he insisted that he did not do that. In his words, "I stayed third and I was all over the brakes." Wallace explained that the moment he turned down the track, he felt the car getting away from him, so he got on the brakes, kept the car underneath him, and still ended up side by side with the leaders. He pointed out that the move should have propelled him to the lead, and it did not, because his car did not respond well to it. He also claimed that the SIMP-T data, which is NASCAR's telemetry system, would back up his story, showing him braking and trying to hold position rather than gain one. According to Wallace, he stayed in third from the entry of turn 3 nearly all the way to the finish line and only moved to second because Gibbs gave him a shove from behind in the final 50 yards. That defense raised a real question. If Wallace crossed the line in the same position he held when he went below the line, how is that advancing his position? NASCAR shut the door on any appeal quickly. Cup Series Managing Director Brad Moran confirmed that the penalty is not reviewable. because it falls under an on-track judgment call governed directly by the rulebook. And then NASCAR explained its reasoning in detail. On the Hauler Talk podcast, NASCAR Vice President of Racing Communications Mike Ford broke down exactly why the call was made, and his explanation eliminated every part of Wallace's defense. Ford stated that attempting to give the position back does not matter in this rule. According to Ford, officials determined that Wallace advanced his position in a couple of different areas. He pointed out that if you watch the replays, there was a moment on the last lap where Wallace was effectively in first place, close enough to the start-finish line that if a caution had come out at that moment, he would have been declared the winner. In NASCAR's eyes, that alone was advancing his position whether he intended it or not. Ford also addressed the argument that Wallace never fully completed a pass. He made it clear that completing a pass is irrelevant under this rule. A driver does not need to get his rear bumper ahead of another car's front bumper. Being even a fraction of an inch ahead counts as improving your position, and according to NASCAR, that was clearly the case here. Ford also noted that Wallace would never have reached the position he did without going below the line in the first place. Interestingly, Ford revealed that the 2311 racing team handled the protest with complete professionalism. NASCAR Vice President of Competition Elton Sawyer reportedly said the team could not have been more respectful during the 20-minute post-race protest window, even though the penalty was a devastating blow. Perhaps the most valuable perspective came from Denny Hamlin, who wears two hats in this situation. He is the driver of the number 11 car for Joe Gibbs Racing, and he is also the co-owner of 2311 Racing, the team Wallace drives for. On his Actions Detrimental podcast, Hamlin admitted that when he watched the move live, he immediately knew it would be a penalty, because he has been penalized for the exact same thing before. Hamlin explained that the rule is not literal about gaining a position. It is about making a move to advance. The intention matters, not just the result. His advice to drivers was simple. He said, you have to pretend that there's a wall there. In his view, the yellow line is a wall that simply is not made of concrete. And the moment a driver steps out of bounds, it does not matter whether an advantage was gained or not. But Hamlin also defended his driver's instincts. He said, man, going for a win, I think you have to go for it. He reminded everyone that drivers cannot actually see the yellow lines from inside the car on the backstretch at this track, because the banking difference between the apron and the racing surface is minimal. In Hamlin's view, Wallace had already committed to going 3 wide wherever the biggest hole opened up, and by the time he could see the line, it was too late. For context, the double yellow line rule has been in place since 2001, and it applies at 3 tracks: Echo Park Speedway, Daytona International Speedway, and Talladega Superspeedway. The rule exists to stop drivers from using the flat apron as a passing lane, which historically triggered massive wrecks. Ford acknowledged that not everyone loves the rule, but NASCAR believes racing at these tracks would be far more dangerous without it, which is why it has stayed in the rulebook for 25 years. Now let us get to the first big story, the reported fallout inside 2311 Racing. And an important note here, these details come from reports and have not been officially confirmed by the team, so treat them accordingly. According to the report, 2311 Racing conducted an internal review shortly after the race, bringing team executives and competition leaders together for a closed-door meeting with Wallace. The purpose was not to question his future with the organization. It was to examine the decisions he made in the closing laps that led to one of the most costly penalties of the season. The leadership group reportedly concluded that the mistake was avoidable, and that it cost the team one of its strongest finishes of the entire 2026 season, along with extremely valuable championship points. Following that meeting, the report claims 2311 Racing took internal disciplinary action. Wallace was reportedly given an undisclosed financial fine within the organization, and performance bonuses tied to that race result were reportedly revoked. Wallace is also expected to participate in additional race review sessions with engineers and team management, focusing on superspeedway strategy, risk assessment, and decision-making in high-pressure moments late in races. What is important is how the team reportedly framed all of this. These measures were viewed internally as accountability, not as a loss of confidence. Team leadership reportedly emphasized that Wallace remains one of the cornerstone drivers of 2311 racing. One source described the atmosphere of the meeting as professional but firm. The report also says executives pointed back to several earlier races this season where penalties and preventable incidents kept the number 23 team from maximizing strong performances. Instead of treating this as an isolated mistake, they reportedly see a pattern they want to eliminate before the playoff fight intensifies. The second story is the reaction, and it exploded almost instantly. Critics argued this was a completely preventable mistake, part of a recurring pattern of costly errors at critical moments, followed by attention shifting toward officiating rather than personal responsibility. Supporters pushed back hard, arguing that Wallace was genuinely trying to avoid a wreck, that the punishment was excessive for the circumstances, and that he is judged more harshly than other drivers in identical situations. Then there is the Ty Gibbs subplot. After the race, Gibbs confronted Wallace on pit road and the exchange got heated. Gibbs said he went over to apologize for bumping Wallace out of 6th place at the end of Stage 2, but claimed that Wallace showed a lot of disrespect during the conversation. Wallace saw it completely differently. He said he told Gibbs there was an opportunity to lift and give room, and Gibbs did not take it. According to Wallace, Gibbs hit him square in the bumper and the block was thrown well in advance. Wallace summed up the relationship bluntly, saying, "That's Toyota teammates. Don't race very well together. Even the race winner weighed in." When Ryan Blaney learned about the penalty during his post-race interview, his reaction was just 2 words. He said, "That sucks." And the emotional toll extended beyond the racetrack. Wallace's wife, Amanda Wallace, followed the race on social media throughout the night, and after the penalty was announced, her post reflected the frustration inside the family. One of her messages read, "This is exhausting to watch." Now for the stakes, because they could not be higher. Wallace sits 13th in the regular season standings, 55 points above the playoff cut line. Without the penalty, that cushion would have been 82 points. He has now finished outside the top 20 in 6 of the last 9 races, and there are only 6 regular season races remaining before the playoffs begin. Wallace understands exactly what that means. He said the drivers behind him in points are licking their chops, and he admitted we're not safe. That is why this story is bigger than one penalty. It is about accountability inside one of NASCAR's top organizations. It is about how one of the sport's most talked about drivers responds under pressure. And it is about whether the number 23 team can turn frustration into momentum when every single point matters. The internal review, the reported fine, and the social media debate do not earn championship points. The only thing that can change this narrative is what Bubba Wallace does on the racetrack over the next 6 races. So now I want to hear from you. Did 2311 Racing reportedly handle this the right way? And did NASCAR get the penalty right, or was dropping him from 2nd to 29th too severe? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe if you have not already, because we are building this community toward 15,000 subscribers, and we would love to have you with us.